A fandom enamored with fluff is facing a problem quite tough. Our fursuit parade can't biodegrade, so what are we to do with this stuff? But furries, don't feel bereft. The answers you see are quite deft. For what you should do with your worn-out roo, it turns out, is culturally effed. I'm your host, RK, and this is the 8th and final installment of Fursuit history. If furries love anything more than foxes, it's faux fur. The fandom currently deploys literal tons of plastic fluff for its gaiety and gallivanting. But what happens to the fluff when the suit wears out? Current fursuits are made from a polymer that will never rot or photodegrade. But it will become matted and unusable. Not even the microbes that would eat real fur will touch the stuff. That's great for future archaeologists wanting to study our mysterious ways, but bad for everyone else in the meantime. While we love the furry fandom and dream it will live on forever, it's totally possible that our fursuits will outlive the fandom that inspired them. We tend to think of plastic pollution as plastic bottles and bags. But these things are litter and they build up in large deposits in the ocean. The bulk of plastic pollution is far easier to miss and way harder to clean up. Microplastic debris, the size of sand or small fibers, like in fursuit fur or any polyester fabric like sweaters or your carpet. They make up 85% of plastic found on shorelines. If we're not careful, our pretend animals could end up harming real animals, including creatures like you and me. To study the environmental impact of fursuits, we can break the life cycle of the fursuit into 4 stages: manufacture, assembly, use, and disposal. First off, manufacturing that plush plastic pelt. From raw oil to a fuzzy animal, most faux furs are made from non-renewable petroleum products. You run melted plastic through an industrial-strength cotton candy machine, then weave it into fabric. The fabric has loops on it like a beach towel, but way more of them and they're way smaller. The final stage trims the ends of these loops, leaving millions of strands of artificial animal hair. Some new faux furs are made of cotton and can therefore biodegrade, but that too has an environmental toll. Cotton has to be planted, watered, covered in pesticides, harvested, transported, and processed. Oh, and we probably want to color the fur too. Without going too far down the sustainable fashion rabbit hole, it's worth mentioning that most current dye methods, whether natural or synthetic, produce most of the clothing industry's pollution. And for simplicity's sake, we're only talking about the fur, not even mentioning the foam or the other plastics or electronics that go into making a full fursuit. Next, assembly. Now that we have our faux fur produced, what happens when it's sewn into a cartoon character to be worn for conventions and parties and music videos? It gets cut into shape, leaving behind piles of unused scraps. The fur might also be shaved to shorten it and make it more uniform. Likewise, foam padding that gives fursuits their shape has to be sculpted. Mixed type of colored plastic is the toughest type to recycle. Sustainability at this stage centers on reducing waste. Luckily, fursuit makers are a creative lot. Pieces can be cleverly planned out, cookie cutter style, to minimize how much fur is needed and how much is left over. Leftover material can be used to make accessories like gloves or tails for matching partials, or even plushies. Smaller parts can be included with suits as a repair kit. While working with scraps can be a hassle, suit makers actually have a financial incentive to be sustainable. Just like a baker wants to use all of the dough a fursuit maker wants to use as much fur as possible. They just have to do what they do best, which is sharing tips with other suit makers via social media. They can also cruise overstock and thrift stores for new fake fur items to use as cheap, eco-friendly raw materials. Conventions can also help by making it easy for makers to sell scrap fur or donating it to the charity auction. Scrap fur can also be used in DIY ears and tail panels for the community itself, or traded with other creators. A general rule of thumb when dealing with scraps is just toss anything smaller than a post-it note. Those pieces aren't usually worth saving. Scraps can be sent to textile recycling centers if there are any in your region, but the landfill is the most likely destination for these scraps. Now we come to using the fursuit. The costume is worn and enjoyed, danced in, cuddled, hugged, fist bumped, folded into luggage, laundered, shipped around the world a few times on trains, planes, and autos. The suit is sweated profusely in and will probably be thoroughly washed several times in its lifetime. And just like a real mammal, it sheds. Brushing your suit is an important step to keeping it looking fresh and new, but every time you brush it, plastic strands get pulled out. These fibers either blow away into the atmosphere and into nature, or get vacuumed up and tossed in the trash. These microplastics are not recyclable or reclaimable. If you're into felting, you can technically reclaim some of those pulled out furs, but not everyone's into felting. How can we make use more sustainable? Simple, just take care of your fursuit. Repair rips and tears while they're small, spot clean stains and dirt by dabbing it with a wet cloth and a mild detergent. Wear a balaclava, headband, or bandana to keep sweat out of the head. Wear Under Armour to keep sweat off of the body. After each use, hang it up to dry with the help of a fan to limit how often it needs a deep clean. One commonly shared tip is cleaning it with a solution of alcohol and water. Check out some tutorials and learn what your type of suit needs. A fursuit is probably the most expensive item in your wardrobe, so it makes sense to factor in a little extra time and care to maintain it. When ordering a new suit, ask your fursuit maker to include some scraps so that you have materials to fix it later. In addition to being more eco-friendly, it also saves you the headache of trying to match fur for a small repair or modification later. Last of all, disposal. A fursuit might last a couple of years or a couple of decades, but eventually it will start to wear out. Fur thins out and you start to see the clumps of glue. The seams become more apparent. What was once a cute and cuddly cartoon brought to life becomes a Five Nights at Freddy's monster haunting hotel hallways. Sweat also degrades fabric, and we all know these costumes are heat generators. If the suit is in good shape but no longer fits your personality or your waistline, consider selling it to a friend or giving it away. Someone else could have a lot of fun wearing it as their starter fursuit. If some parts are salvageable, consider using them in your next fursuit. Conventions can help normalize the idea that fursuits can have a life after their first user by hosting panels on salvaging old suits or upcycling fursuit and scrap swaps. An old suit can be retrofitted with new tech, and old matted fur or exposed seams can be repaired with character-affirming upgrades. Once the fursuit reaches the end of its usable life cycle, it's thrown away. The fur will sit in a landfill for anywhere between 500 and 1,000 years without decaying, or until some new microbe is able to digest that plastic, or some garbage dump archaeologist in the 2520s pulls it out. Even that far in the future, it might be smooshed or matted, but if it's clean, would still retain its color and thread weave. Burning your fursuit is not a hot idea either, since it just releases all of that carbon straight into the atmosphere. Don't do that. It may look cool for a video, but seriously, please don't. The above solutions reduce the impact of fursuiting, but how can we make it truly sustainable? Should we all adopt chia pet hyena personas and be the grassy knolls? In theory, we could use actual fur. Animals are more carbon neutral and, more importantly, biodegradable, but that comes with a myriad of its own problems. Ethically, it's a non-starter. Furries love animals, specifically we like them being alive. The practical side isn't much better either. Real fur weighs more, it doesn't breathe, maintaining it requires some serious chemicals to keep the leather and hair from getting brittle, though you could slow this process down by refrigerating your entire naturally made fursuit. Real fur is also slower and many times more expensive to produce. What we really need is a biodegradable fur or a fully recyclable faux fur, not unlike the plant-based bottles now hitting the market. And that's just starting to happen now, actually. In 2020, a company called Duvaltex patented the first polyester that's appetizing to landfill microbes. It's called Clean Impact Textile, and while it's only being used to make regular cloth at the moment, making it into faux fur is more of a matter of demand than engineering difficulty. So as biodegradable faux fur comes onto the market over the next several years, furries should pounce on it, even if it's only a few colors at a time, to encourage fabric vendors to stock more. A 50% biodegradable fursuit is way better than a 0% biodegradable fursuit. We can also embrace non-furred fursuits, make way for more dragons, nagas, pangolins, and crafty fur substitutes like this classic shredded paper dog or this burlap sack goat. There are creative ways we can still cosplay as our OCs without resorting to fur at all. A dragon fursuit made of stretchy spandex, for example, contains less plastic than the same suit made of shaved down faux fur. Overall, yes, fursuits are giant pieces of plastic cotton candy, but we have ways to reduce their ecological impact. We all have a part to play in protecting the environment, furries included. But remember, your fursuit isn't driving climate change. The richest 100 corporations are. Demand sustainability and stricter environmental standards from your politicians and corporations. In fact, wearing your fursuit while you do so is sure to get the issue extra attention. Even if we each only do a little, it adds up to a lot. So keep suiting. Learn how to properly care for your suit and opt for more sustainable suits as makers start to offer them. Fursuit history has brought us to the very roots of what it means when we dress up as animal folk. We change our very being from the face outwards, and we are empowered by these masks that amplify our identity, not hide it. We found out about our origins in professional costume performers of the stage, the stadium, and the cinema, and how the rise of cosplay made room for our original characters. We learned how fursuits get put together, the gadgets that power them, and how one day they will be torn apart. Thank you for joining us in our final installment of Fursuit History. If you'd like to help sustain us, make sure to like, subscribe, and consider sponsoring us on Patreon. Today's episode was written by Tempo. I have been your host and the creator of Fursuit History, RK. Culturally Eft, and by extension Fursuit History, would not be possible without our Patreon supporters, especially Arbitrary Plaid. Thank you so much. We love you. Stay fluffy, my friends. Thanks for watching. Cue sad music.